One of the things that I'm most proud about is that we don't do allowance in our households. With our kids, we don't do any allowance. How we do things is that you have to work to actually get money. So we've always done this. There's always been somewhat of a transactional relationship in our house. I don't like the idea of just giving an allowance just for the sake of allowance. And so what we do is have, in a very age appropriate way, a tie to, if you want to actually get money or do something, then you actually have to work for it. And so there's always been chores. In our household, we tend to do, things like the kids actually cut the grass, right? Which seems like totally normal to me. But in the community that I live in the area of the world that I live in, it's extraordinarily weird. Nobody has their kids cut the grass. Um, and it's really interesting and fascinating to see this, right? So they make pretty good money by cutting the grass, probably more than what they should. Um, of course, what we tend to do is, if there's things that are, school related or things that they truly need, we pay for those. Obviously, we're not like a market economy in any sort of way, but it's to to build that skill set. The whole reason is just to build the skill set to know that, if you want to do well, you actually have to do a little bit of work. There always is, and as much as I push back against sort of transactional, relationships, there is in most places around the world a somewhat, transaction relationship, right? That you do a little bit for me, and then, I will pay you, right? Like, I think that that is a pretty natural thing that happens in most places around the world. Um, and so knowing this and sort of teaching some of these skill sets is a really incredibly important thing. And for my son, my oldest son, my youngest son is not there yet. He's still pretty young. Um, but I'm super proud of him because he went out and got a job. He went through the work of like a real job, not at mom and dad's house. Went through the work of applying and going through it. And part of the reason why he got the job is through personal connections of it working at something all the time, right? Like, there is, we swim in our house. We're not like, nobody's going to the Olympics, but we do swim in our house on a regular basis. And there was a personal connection through that. Um, and so, realizing these things, that it's a both the, a little bit of the transactional stuff, but also sort of a relational stuff is incredibly important for somebody to understand this. And I think it sets people up, if you can do this in your house, it sort of sets people up to do well in the long term. At the beginning, it's kind of hard, right? Like, when I started doing this, I think our kids were like 5 and 6 years old. That they would do chores around the house, clean a window, and they would get $1. Um, but all of that is knowing, you know, there's two things I want to instill, is that there is this somewhat transactional relationship that exists, right? It's not somewhat, it is true. There is a transactional relationship that exists, but also to know that there's security that there. So if they know that, mom and dad are going to help them out whenever they can. That's why we pay for things that, are, um, legitimate things. And sometimes we could do treats and all that kind of stuff. That's like, what it means to be part of a family. Um, but the other thing that's important, and this is where, you know, we're really, I'm really gung ho about it. I don't know about my wife in terms of thinking about this. But whatever they earn, it's their money, right? And they could do whatever they want. Now we try to teach elements of the spend, save, give aspect of things. Our give tends to be, I struggle with that in terms of the give because I spend so much on the reciprocity project. And right now it's just complete charity. Um, so that's a whole chunk of our life is on that. And with our kids, we sort of encourage them to find ways to give in different ways. Um, but at the same time, there's also elements of the save is important part, but then as well, knowing to give, right? Like, or knowing to spend. And so that's an important aspect in our life is whatever they earn is their money and they could do whatever they want with it. Now it turns out because we kind of, tease and stuff like that every once in a while, um, that they do a very good job of both saving and then they also go and spend as well. They buy things that they want to do, whether it's gum or, video games or whatever. They go out and they do those things themselves. And I try to encourage them to get in the practice of spending and buying things because if they ask to do it, I just simply say, yeah, no problem. Right. If they want to buy something, it's no problem as long as it's their money. Now there's a lot to be said with that. And I've seen this multiple times. First of all, they tend to hesitate and make good spending choices at that moment when it's their money. They hesitate and they say, well, maybe I'm not going to do this. Or sometimes they're like, yeah, I'm going to do it. And all of that is good, right? Knowing that is a good practice to get into. Um, and then the other thing that's really incredibly important, sorry, I got tickle in my throat and it threw me off. Excuse me. Um, I got a cold last week and still kind of getting over the cough. So the idea is to ensure that they're feeling things whenever they're making purchase decisions, and it's not always just mom and dad. And sometimes those feelings are great, right? Like that, they're worthwhile, and they made some great choices, and they would say it's worthwhile, but sometimes they made bad choices where they spent it on, some video game upgrade, and they're like, this is not that great. Um, all of those are good lessons to learn, right? It's the practice of getting through things and doing real life choices that allow you to do better as you get older. Because there's just this moment in life where you're no longer, mom and dad are no longer responsible for you that much. I mean, we'll always be there, right, for our kids, but they'll be on their own and they need to learn these skills as they're on their own. All of these are very healthy. Um, and to make sure that they have healthy patterns in life so that they can get back up and not get too thrown off whenever life throws you weird ones when you're by yourself. Um, and so it's always this independence that is extremely important and independence at a reasonable amount. Now it's harder as our kids are getting older to let go even more. But you know, we are always working at that as a family unit of letting go even more so our kids can grow and do better. And it's a hard thing. I don't know if once you become a parent or if you're parents, you understand. Letting go and letting your kids kind of naturally progress to independence where they're just doing their thing is an important skill set. Um, and it shouldn't feel that dramatic by the time that they go and do something and they explore the world by themselves. So with that, I think is an important lesson. Encourage, if you don't have kids, or eventually, if you have kids, try to encourage them to do things that are on their own. And that means failing and screwing up, making bad decisions. All of that stuff is extraordinarily healthy because you need to develop that skill set of how do I respond when I make a bad decision. All right, take care and have a wonderful day.